Clarence Whitaker, 68, cruised through Buckhead's pristine streets, jazz humming low. Blue lights flashed. Officer Lyle Grayson, smug, yanked him over, barking about suspicious driving. Clarence spoke steady, respectful, but Lyle roared, "You're resisting." Baton raised, Lyle froze when Clarence said, "Call the Chief Justice." Smirking, he added, "That's me." Lyle scoffed, but radios crackled, backup swarming. Cuffs bit Clarence's wrists. A war ignited tonight, but how far would it burn? Before we dive deeper, share where you're watching from. And if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's episode will shock you. Clarence Whitaker's wrists ached, the cold steel cuffs digging into his skin as Officer Lyle Grayson shoved him through the precinct's heavy doors. The air inside reeked of stale coffee and sweat, a fluorescent buzz overhead casting West African. Rhythms pulsed faintly from a radio in the corner, now drowned by the clatter of boots and radio static. Buckhead's finest dragged him past a desk where a clerk barely glanced up, her fingers clicking on a keyboard. Clarence, 68, kept his chin high, his tailored jacket scuffed from the asphalt, his silver hair glinting under harsh lights. He was no stranger to pressure, but this was different. This was personal. The precinct's walls scrawled, with faded graffiti closed in, and he felt the weight of every eye on him. A black man in a place that chewed up men like him. Grayson, young, wiry, with a buzz cut and a sneer, pushed Clarence into an interrogation room. The door slammed shut, metal echoing. A single bulb swung above a scarred table, casting shadows that danced across Clarence's face. He sat, cuffs chaining him to a bolt in the floor, his posture straight, as if he were still behind the bench. He'd spent decades as Georgia's Chief Justice, wielding the gavel, upholding law in a state where justice often bent to power. Now he was the one in chains. Sergeant Vernon Holt stormed in, a bear of a man with a graying mustache and eyes like flint. His badge gleamed, but his scowl screamed trouble. "So you're the big-shot judge, huh?" Holt's voice dripped venom, his meaty hand slamming a folder onto the table. "Got a tip you're impersonating a state official. That's a felony, old man." He leaned close, breath sour with tobacco. "We don't take kindly to frauds around here." Clarence met Holt's glare, his voice steady as granite. "I am Clarence Whitaker, Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court. Check my ID. Call the clerk's office. This is a mistake." His words were measured, each one deliberate, the kind of tone that had silenced courtrooms. But Holt's lip curled, unimpressed. "ID? Funny thing, we didn't find one on you." Holt opened the folder, sliding out a blank sheet. "No wallet, no nothing, just a mouthy guy in a cheap suit." He chuckled, low and mean, pacing the room like a wolf circling prey. "You think you can talk your way out? I've seen your kind before, always playing the victim." Clarence's jaw tightened. His wallet, tucked in his coat pocket when Grayson cuffed him, was gone, stolen or lost in the chaos of the stop. His pulse quickened, but he kept his face stone, refusing to give Holt the satisfaction of a crack. "I demand my phone call," he said, voice firm, the Constitution his shield. "You can't hold me without due process." Holt barked a laugh, slamming the table again, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "Due process? You're in my house now, boy." The slur landed like a blade, deliberate, meant to cut deep. Clarence's chest burned, memories of his youth in gym. Crow Georgia flashing. The signs, the shouts, the fear. He'd clawed his way to the top, but here in this room, he was just another black man to them. The door creaked open, and a younger officer, barely 25, slipped in, his face pale, eyes darting. Sarge, I ran the plates on his car. It's registered to a Clarence Whitaker, Chief Justice, Georgia Supreme Court. Got a photo from the state site. It's him." The kid's voice trembled, holding out a printout, Clarence's. Official portrait staring back. Holt snatched the paper, his face twisting like he'd swallowed glass. He glared at Clarence, then at the kid, who shrank under that flinty stare. "You sure about this, rookie?" Holt's tone was a warning, heavy with threat. The kid nodded, swallowing hard, but said nothing more. Holt crumpled the printout, tossing it to the floor. "Doesn't prove jack, could be forged. We're holding him till we sort this mess." Clarence's stomach knotted. They knew. They had proof, and still, they buried it. This wasn't a mistake, it was a setup, and Holt was the muscle behind it. "You're violating my rights," Clarence said, each word clipped. "I want my lawyer now." Holt grinned, teeth yellowed, predatory. "Lawyer? Sure thing, Your Honor." He mocked the title, spitting it like a curse. "But first, let's—" "Check that car of yours again, gotta be thorough." He winked at Grayson, who smirked back, a silent pact passing between them. They left, the door locking with a click that echoed in Clarence's bones. Minutes bled into an hour, the bulb's hum his only company. He tested the cuffs, the metal unyielding, his wrists raw. His mind raced, piecing it together. Grayson's aggression, Holt's dismissal, the missing wallet. It all pointed to something bigger, a machine grinding him down because of who he was, what he represented. A black man with power was a threat, and they meant to break him. The door swung open again, and Grayson returned, holding a clear plastic bag. Inside, a small packet of white powder gleamed under the light. Clarence's heart sank, dread pooling in his gut. "Look what we found in your trunk," Grayson said, voice smug, dangling the bag like a trophy. "Cocaine, enough to put you away for trafficking. 20 years minimum." "That's not mine," Clarence snapped, his calm cracking for the first time. "You planted it, this is a lie." His voice rose, echoing off the walls, but Grayson just laughed, tossing the bag onto the table. Holt re-entered, his grin wider, more feral. "Planted? That's a bold claim, old man. Got proof?" Holt leaned in, his bulk blocking the light, casting Clarence in shadow. "Way I see it, you're a dirty judge running drugs, playing the race card when you get caught. Jury's gonna love that story." Clarence's breath caught. He'd seen frame-ups in his career, sent men to prison for less, but now he was the target. The powder, the missing ID, the rookie's silenced truth. It was a noose tightening around his neck. "You won't get away with this," he said, low, fierce, his eyes burning into Holt's. "I'll fight you every step." Holt shrugged, unfazed. "Fight all you want, you're done." He nodded to Grayson, who hauled Clarence up, shoving him toward a holding cell. The corridor stank of bleach, the bars rusted but solid. They uncuffed him just long enough to push. Him inside, the door clanging shut. Alone, Clarence sank onto a concrete bench, the cold seeping through his coat. His title, his career, his life, all teetering on a lie. Hope flickered when his lawyer, Sarah Vance, arrived, her heels clicking as she stormed the precinct. A firebrand in her 40s, she'd clerked for Clarence years ago, sharp as a blade. "This is insanity," she hissed through the bars, her eyes blazing. "I've got the court clerk confirming your identity. We're filing for bail, and I'm tearing Holt apart for this." Her confidence steadied him, a lifeline in the dark. He gripped the bars, nodding, his voice low. "They planted drugs, Sarah. Cocaine. It's a setup." Her face paled, but she squared her shoulders. "Then we fight dirtier. I'll get you. Out by morning." She turned, already dialing her phone, her voice fading as she marched off. Clarence exhaled, daring to believe her. Bail, a hearing, the truth. He could claw his way back. He'd faced worse odds and won. But hours later, Sarah returned, her face grim, eyes red. "The judge denied bail," she said, voice tight, barely above a whisper. "Said you're a flight risk given the evidence. I checked the judge's history, Clarence. He's tight with Holt. Owes him favors from way back. This isn't just a frame-up, it's a conspiracy." Clarence's knees buckled, the cell spinning. Denied bail. A crooked judge. Holt's reach was deeper than he'd feared, a web of power spun to crush him. The cocaine charge wasn't just a lie. It was a death sentence for his name, his legacy. He sank back onto the bench, the concrete colder now, his hands trembling. Sarah reached through the bars, squeezing his shoulder. "We're not done," she said, fierce. "I'm digging into Holt's past. We'll expose him." He nodded, but doubt gnawed. Holt's grin, Grayson's smirk, the baggie of powder, they haunted him. He was a judge, a symbol of justice. But in this cell, he was nothing. The system he'd served was turning on him, and it wasn't just personal, it was racial. A message carved in every slur, every lie. A black man, no matter how high he climbed, could be dragged back down. As the cell's shadows deepened, Clarence's mind sharpened. He'd fought too long to break now. Holt wanted him silent, but silence wasn't his way. He'd find a crack in their game, a witness, A record, something to turn the tide. The rookie's fear, Sarah's fire, they were sparks. In the dark. He closed his eyes, jazz from the radio echoing in his head, its defiance fueling him. This wasn't over. Not yet. Clarence Whitaker's cell door groaned open at dawn, the guard's keys jangling like a taunt. His wrists, still raw from cuffs, ached as he shuffled out, Sarah Vance at his side, her jaw set like steel. Bail had come through, a miracle scraped. Together by her legal acrobatics, though the cocaine charge still hung over him like a guillotine. The precinct's air was thick with bleach and malice, officers smirking as he passed, their eyes screaming what their lips didn't. A black man. Even a judge didn't belong in their world. Clarence kept his spine straight, his 68 years carved into every step, his silver hair catching the flicker of fluorescent lights. He was free for now, but freedom felt like a trap. Outside, Atlanta's morning sun blazed. The Buckhead, precinct surrounded by a swarm of reporters, their cameras flashing like vultures circling a corpse, microphones thrust toward him, voices shouting, "Chief Justice, any comment on the drug bust?" Sarah pushed through, shielding him, but the headlines were already screaming. "Judge Whitaker caught in scandal," blared a newsstand tabloid, the words slicing deeper than any blade. Clarence's chest tightened, his legacy, built over decades, now twisted into a lie. He'd faced bias before, but this was a machine, grinding him down with surgical precision. Sarah hustled him into her car, a sleek black sedan, and peeled away, tires screeching. "We're going to my office," she said, eyes on the road. Voice clipped. "We'll countersue, expose Holt's frame-up. The truth's still out there." Clarence nodded, staring out the window, Atlanta's glass towers glinting like a false promise. He wanted to believe her, but the weight of that baggie, Holt's grin, and the rookie's silenced truth gnawed at him. This wasn't just a mistake. It was war, and he was bleeding. By noon, the story had metastasized. Cable news ran loops of his arrest, pundits with slick hair and sharper tongues tearing him apart. "A black judge caught red-handed," one sneered, his smirk dripping with glee. "Proof they're all corrupt." Clarence sat in Sarah's office, a mahogany-paneled fortress downtown, watching the carnage unfold on a flat screen. His face, once a symbol of justice, was now a mugshot, plastered across every channel. His daughter Maya, 32 and a rising journalist, burst in, her braids swinging, eyes blazing. "This is bullshit," she snapped, slamming her laptop onto the desk. "They're lying, Dad. We're fighting back." Maya's fire sparked something in Clarence, a flicker of the defiance that had carried him through Jim Crow, through law school, through every door slammed in his face. She rallied her network, young activists with sharp minds and sharper phones, organizing a protest outside the precinct. "We're taking it to the streets," she said, her fingers flying over her keyboard, posting calls to action. "They can't silence us." By dusk, hundreds gathered, signs waving, voices roaring, "Free Whitaker, end the lies." Clarence watched from Sarah's window, heart swelling, thinking maybe, just maybe, the tide was turning. He joined them against Sarah's protests, his presence electrifying the crowd. The precinct loomed, its windows dark, cops in riot gear, glaring from the steps. Clarence spoke, his voice booming, steady as ever. "I am no criminal, I am your Chief Justice, and I will not bow." Cheers erupted, phones recording every word, the moment feeling like victory. He clasped Maya's hand, her smile fierce, and for the first time in days, he breathed easier. The people had his back. The truth would win, but truth was no match for power. That night, Channel 7, Atlanta's biggest station, aired a bombshell. Randall Cobb, a media mogul with a silver mane and a smile like a shark, introduced exclusive footage on his primetime show. The grainy video showed a man, unmistakably Clarence, handing a baggie to a hooded figure in an alley. The crowd's cheers turned to gasps, then boos as Cobb's voiceover purred, "Chief Justice or Chief Dealer, you decide." Clarence's stomach plummeted, the room spinning. It was fake, a crude edit, but it spread like wildfire, shared 1,000,000 times by midnight. Maya screamed at the TV, "That's not you! They doctored it!" Sarah's face paled, her phone buzzing with panicked clients. Clarence sat frozen, the weight of the lie crushing him. He'd seen deepfakes before, but this was surgical, every pixel crafted to bury him. The protest outside morphed into chaos, supporters turning on him, their signs now reading, "Traitor," and "Lock him." Thup! A brick sailed through Sarah's car window, glass shattering. A note tied to it scrawled with a racial slur so vile it burned his eyes. Clarence grabbed Maya, pulling her away as more projectiles flew. The crowd's love curdling into hate. They fled in Sarah's battered car, weaving through Atlanta's neon-lit streets, the city now a maze of danger. Sirens wailed in the distance, and Clarence's phone buzzed with death threats, each one uglier than the last. "You're done, boy," one read, the word slicing through his armor. Maya clutched his hand, her voice shaking. "We'll prove it's fake, Dad. We'll find the original." But Clarence saw the truth in her eyes. Cobb's lie was too big, too perfect. The world had already judged him. As they screeched into an alley, hiding from the mob, Clarence's mind raced. Cobb wasn't just a pundit, he was a puppet master, tied to Holt, pulling strings to crush him. The planted drugs, the missing ID, now this video, it was a symphony of hate, each note louder, sharper, deadlier. He'd thought the protest was his salvation, but it was a setup, a stage for Cobb to drop his bomb. Clarence's name, his life, his family, all collateral damage in a war he hadn't chosen. He looked at Maya, her face lit by the glow of her phone already digging for answers. "We're not done," she said, echoing Sarah's defiance. Clarence nodded, but dread coiled in his gut. Cobb's reach was vast, his resources endless, and this video was just the start. What would he unleash next? Clarence's hand tightened into a fist, his resolve hardening. He'd survived worse, and he'd fight, but the cost was climbing and the shadows were closing in. What do you do when the world turns on you? If you've ever been judged unfairly, drop a 1 in the comments. If you're raging at Cobb's lies, smash that like button. And if you're ready to see Clarence fight back, subscribe now, because the next chapter will leave you speechless. How will Clarence escape a city that's turned against him? Clarence Whitaker's heart pounded as Sarah's car screeched through Atlanta's backstreets, the shattered glass in the rear window glinting under streetlights. Maya clutched her phone, its screen casting a pale glow on her tense face, scrolling for any shred of hope to counter Cobb's doctored video. The city pulsed with rage, its neon signs blurring past, a reminder that nowhere was safe. Clarence, 68, felt the weight of his years, his bruised wrists throbbing, but his mind was razor-sharp. Cobb and Holt had turned the world against him, but he wasn't broken yet. Sarah's voice cut through the silence, steady despite the chaos. "We're heading to my firm. Eleanor's waiting. She's got the resources to bury Holt." Clarence nodded, clinging to the flicker of possibility, though doubt gnawed at him like a hungry rat. Elena Marquez, senior partner at Sarah's law firm, was a legend, a Puerto Rican powerhouse who'd taken down corrupt cops and crooked CEOs. Her office, perched on the 20th floor of a downtown tower, was a fortress of glass and steel, its walls lined with awards and photos of her shaking hands with governors. Clarence and Maya arrived under cover of night, slipping through a service entrance to avoid the reporters camped outside. Elena greeted them, her dark eyes fierce, her suit crisp despite the late hour. "This is war," she said, voice like a blade. "Holt's dirty, and I've got files to prove it. We're suing the precinct for false arrest, defamation, everything." She slid a stack of documents across her desk, police reports and whistleblower accounts detailing Holt's history of planting evidence, all stamped with the precinct's seal. Clarence's pulse quickened, hope flaring as he scanned the pages. One report, buried in the pile, described Holt framing a black teenager for theft. The kid's life ruined with a single baggie, just like Clarence's. Another linked Holt to a string of brutal arrests, all targeting black men, all swept under the rug. "This is it," Clarence said, his voice low, almost reverent. "This could end him." Maya's eyes lit up, her fingers twitching as if ready to tweet the truth to the world. Eleanor leaned forward, her smile sharp. "We file tomorrow, demand a public inquiry. Cobb's video won't stand up when we gut Holt's credibility." For the first time in days, Clarence felt the scales tipping. Elena's evidence was a lifeline, a chance to claw back his name, his life. He pictured Holt in cuffs, Cobb's, empire cracking, the city waking up to the truth. Maya hugged him, her warmth grounding him, and even Sarah, usually stoic, cracked a rare smile. They worked late, strategizing, drafting motions, the office humming with purpose. Clarence allowed himself to believe, to dream of justice, the gavel back in his hand. But trust is a fragile thing, and betrayal cuts deepest when it's close. Eleanor's junior associate, a slick 20-something named Trevor Blake, lingered. In the shadows, his boyish charm masking a snake's heart. Unbeknownst to the team, Trevor was Randall Cobb's nephew, planted in the firm years ago to feed secrets to his uncle's empire. As Clarence and Elena pored over the files, Trevor slipped into a stairwell, his phone pressed to his ear. "They've got dirt on Holt," he whispered to Cobb, his voice low, eager. "Police reports, witnesses, the works, they're filing tomorrow." Cobb's reply was a hiss, cold and precise. "Burn it, all of it." By dawn, the trap was set. Clarence, exhausted but resolute, sipped coffee in Elena's conference room, the city's skyline glowing pink beyond the windows. Maya typed furiously, drafting a press release to amplify their lawsuit. Elena was on the phone with a judge, securing an emergency hearing. The air crackled with momentum, the fight finally theirs. Then the alarm screamed, red lights flashing, the building's security system shrieking like a wounded animal. Boots thundered in the hall, and the door burst open, Holt's goons pouring in, black-clad, faces masked, batons gleaming. "Down! Now!" one roared, his voice muffled but venomous. Clarence froze, coffee spilling, as a baton cracked against his shoulder, pain exploding down his arm. Maya screamed, diving under the table, but the goons were relentless, smashing computers, shredding files, their boots stomping the evidence into confetti. Slurs echoed, carved into the air. "Go back to the ghetto, Judge." And worse, each word a knife twisted in Clarence's gut. He swung back, his fist connecting with a goon's jaw, but another clubbed his ribs, dropping him to his knees, blood pooling in his mouth. Elena fought too, hurling a chair, but the goons overwhelmed her, zip-tying her wrists. Trevor stood in the corner, feigning panic, his eyes glinting with triumph. The raid was surgical, every file torched, every hard drive smashed. The firm's heart ripped out in minutes. Clarence crawled to Maya, shielding her as glass rained down, the goon's laughter ringing in his ears. "You thought you'd win?" One spat, his boot grazing Clarence's temple. "Holt says hi." The goons vanished as sirens wailed, leaving the office a smoldering ruin. Clarence staggered to his feet, ribs screaming, blood dripping from his brow. Maya clung to him, sobbing, her laptop crushed under debris. Eleanor, freed by a trembling paralegal, stared at the wreckage, her face ashen. "They knew," she whispered, voice hollow. "Someone tipped them." Clarence's mind raced, Trevor's absence glaring, but there was no time to chase it. The evidence, their one shot, was gone, and Holt's grip was tighter than ever. Sarah burst in, her face pale, phone in hand. "It's worse," she said, voice shaking. Channel 7's breaking news, Maya's apartment's on fire, live footage. Clarence's heart stopped, his eyes darting to the TV on the wall. Flames roared, swallowing Maya's building, the anchor's voice smug. "Suspected arson linked to the Whitaker scandal." Maya gasped, her hands trembling, her home, her memories reduced to ash. Clarence pulled her close, his own pain forgotten, rage boiling in his veins. Cobb's hand was everywhere, Holt's boots on their necks. They fled the firm, slipping through a back exit as cops swarmed the tower, their flashlights slicing the dawn. Clarence's body ached, each step a battle, but his mind burned with clarity. Trevor's betrayal, the raid, the fire, it was all connected, a machine of hate built to crush them. He'd thought Elena's files were their salvation, but they were bait, luring him into a slaughter. Holt and Cobb weren't just fighting. They were playing chess, and he was 3 moves behind. As they ducked into an alley, Maya's voice cut through the haze, fierce despite her tears. "We're not done, Dad. We'll find another way." Clarence nodded, his hand squeezing hers, but dread coiled tighter. Cobb's reach was a noose tightening with every step. The firm was ashes, Maya's home gone, and their allies were dwindling. What would Holt unleash next? Clarence's eyes hardened, his resolve aflame in the dark. He'd survived worse, and he'd fight, but the cost was climbing and the city was closing in. Clarence Whitaker's ribs throbbed with every breath, the alley's damp air stinging his bloodied brow as he and Maya slipped through Atlanta's shadows. The city's pulse, once a comfort, now felt like a predator's heartbeat, its neon glow a trap waiting to snap shut. Maya's eyes, red from tears over her torched apartment, burned with defiance, her phone clutched like a weapon. Clarence, 68, leaned against a brick wall, his silver hair matted with sweat, his tailored jacket torn. Holt's raid on Eleanor's firm, Trevor's betrayal, and the fire that swallowed Maya's home were no accidents. They were blows in a war designed to break them. But Clarence's spine stayed iron, his mind a furnace of resolve. They weren't done yet. Maya led him to a rundown warehouse on Atlanta's west side, a hub for a grassroots activist group called the People's Pulse. The building, its windows, boarded, hummed with quiet rebellion, laptops glowing, voices whispering, the air thick with coffee and hope. Inside, a dozen young organizers, mostly black and Latino, greeted Maya with nods, their faces a mix of awe and urgency when they saw Clarence. "Chief Justice," said their leader, a wiry 20-something named Jamal, his dreads tied back, "we've got your back." Jamal's crew had been tracking police corruption for years, their servers packed with data the system couldn't touch. Clarence felt a spark, a chance to strike back. Jamal laid out a plan: crash a city council meeting, broadcast Holt's crimes to Atlanta's elite, force a reckoning. "We hack the precinct's database," he said, pointing to a laptop streaming code. "Get proof Holt's been planting evidence for years. You present it live, Judge, they can't ignore you then." Maya's fingers flew, already probing the precinct's firewalls, her journalism skills blending with the group's tech savvy. Clarence watched, pride swelling despite the pain in his ribs. His daughter was a warrior, and these kids were his army. They worked through the night, the warehouse a hive of clicks and murmurs. By dawn, Maya cracked the database, pulling records that made Clarence's blood run cold. Emails from Holt to his officers ordering creative arrests of black men, lists of planted drugs, even a memo joking about keeping the streets clean. One file tied Holt to a cocaine stash, the same kind used to frame Clarence. "This is it," Clarence said, voice low, gripping the printouts like a lifeline. "We've got him." Jamal grinned, slapping his shoulder, and Maya hugged him, her eyes shining. The council meeting was in 2 days, they'd be ready. Clarence dared to hope, picturing Holt's face as the city turned on him, Cobb's lies crumbling under the weight of truth. The group drilled their plan. Maya would stream. The meeting, Jamal's team would guard the exits, and Clarence would speak, his gavel replaced by a microphone. They tested their hacked feeds, the precinct's secrets ready to flood every screen in Atlanta. For the first time since the traffic stop, Clarence felt control, the tide shifting in his favor. He closed his eyes, jazz from a distant radio soothing his nerves, its defiant notes echoing his own. But hope is a cruel bait, and Cobb's shadow loomed larger than they knew. Randall Cobb's tech firm, Apex Solutions, wasn't just a media giant. It was a surveillance beast, its algorithms sniffing every digital footprint. A rogue signal from the warehouse pinged Apex's servers, and Trevor, still Cobb's mole, flagged it. Cobb, in his penthouse, smirked at the alert, his fingers tapping a glass of bourbon. "They're hacking," he told Holt over a secure line. "Pin it on them. Make it big." Holt, pacing his precinct office, nodded, his mustache twitching. "Terrorists. That'll shut them up." By noon, the trap sprang. Clarence was rehearsing his speech when Jamal's laptop screamed, red warnings flashing. Someone was backtracing their hack. Maya cursed, slamming keys, but it was too late. Apex's counter-hack locked their systems, planting a digital bomb. A manifesto forged in Clarence's name, calling for urban warfare against the city. Within hours, Channel 7 blared the news. Whitaker's terror plot exposed. Cobb's voice, smooth as venom, labeled Clarence and Maya domestic terrorists, their faces plastered on every billboard, a $10,000 bounty on their heads. Panic ripped through the warehouse. "We're burned," Jamal shouted, yanking. Cables, but the sky roared before they could flee. Drones, sleek and black, buzzed overhead, Apex's logo glinting on their hulls, cameras whirring, red lasers slicing the dusk. Clarence grabbed Maya, shoving her toward a back exit, but the doors exploded inward, SWAT bursting through, their rifles raised, gas masks glinting. Bullets tore through crates, glass shattering, screams echoing as the group scattered. "Whitaker! Down!" a SWAT leader bellowed, his voice robotic. But Clarence dove behind a server rack, Maya at his side, her breath ragged. Gas canisters hissed, choking clouds filling the air, burning Clarence's lungs. He crawled, ribs screaming. The hacked printouts clutched to his chest, their last hope. Jamal's crew fought back, hurling chairs, but the SWAT team was a machine, batons cracking skulls, boots stomping hands. Clarence reached a side door, kicking it open, but a drone swooped low, its laser blinding him. A mechanized voice droning, "Surrender, Whitaker." Maya yanked him through, the warehouse erupting in flames behind them, the evidence, the laptops, all consumed. They stumbled into a vacant lot, coughing, the city's skyline a mocking glow. Sirens wailed, closing in, and Clarence's heart sank. Maya was gone, snatched in the chaos. A SWAT radio crackled nearby, confirming it. Female suspect in custody. His daughter, his warrior, was Holt's prisoner now. Clarence sank to his knees, the bounty, the drones, the terrorist label crushing him. Cobb's counter-hack wasn't just a defense, it was a death blow, turning their rebellion into a trap. He staggered to his feet, the printouts crumpled but intact, his only weapon left. The city was a cage. Every camera, every cop hunting him. Holt and Cobb had played him, their power vast, their hate surgical. The warehouse, their one sanctuary, was ash, and Maya was gone. But Clarence's eyes burned, his resolve a blade honed. By loss, he'd find her, expose them, no matter the cost. The jazz in his head played on, defiant, daring him to fight. Have you ever lost everything to a lie? Comment 1 if you're furious at Cobb's betrayal. Feeling Clarence's pain as Maya's taken? Smash that like button. Want to see him rise from the ashes? Subscribe now, because the next chapter's a heart-pounder. Can Clarence save Maya while the city hunts him? Clarence Whitaker's boots scraped against Atlanta's cracked pavement, the city's underbelly swallowing him as he slipped through its maze of alleys. The night air was thick, humid, carrying the stench of garbage and gasoline, a fitting shroud for a man branded a terrorist. His ribs burned from the warehouse raid, his bloodied brow crusted, but the crumpled printouts of Holt's crimes, tucked inside his torn jacket, fueled his steps. Maya was gone, snatched by SWAT. Her absence, a knife in his chest. At 68, Clarence felt every ache, but his eyes, sharp as ever, scanned the shadows. The $10,000 bounty on his head turned every stranger into a hunter, and the city was alive with greed. He ducked into a boarded-up deli, its windows papered with faded menus, the air inside stale with dust. His phone, nearly dead, buzzed with alerts, his face plastered on every news app labeled armed and dangerous. Cobb's deepfake and Holt's frame-up had worked, painting him as a monster. The terrorist manifesto forged by Apex's hack was a masterstroke, turning allies into enemies. Clarence's breath hitched, the jazz in his mind. Coltrane's defiant wail, his only anchor. He had to find Maya, clear his name, but first he needed proof Holt couldn't burn. A contact from his judicial days, Marcus Reed, an ex-cop turned private eye, had texted an address before the warehouse fell. Marcus, a grizzled black man who'd quit the force after one too many accidents with black suspects, owed Clarence a favor from a case years back. "Meet me," the message read. "Got dirt on Holt." Clarence slipped out, weaving through Atlanta's back streets, dodging streetlights, his silver hair tucked under a scavenged cap. The address led to a dive bar in Vine City, its neon sign flickering, bass thumping from within. Marcus waited in a booth, his bald head gleaming, a scar splitting his eyebrow, his eyes wary but warm. "You look like hell, Judge," Marcus said, sliding a beer Clarence didn't touch. "Holt's got the city locked down, but I've got something." He pulled a flash drive from his coat, its surface scratched but intact. Recordings. Holt bragging to his boys about planting drugs. Roughing up black kids, names, dates, stash houses. Enough to bury him. Clarence's pulse quickened, his fingers closing around the drive, its weight a lifeline. Marcus leaned close, voice low. "There's a safe house in Mechanicsville. Crash there, get this to a reporter. I know a guy at the Journal-Constitution." Clarence nodded, hope flickering, fragile but real. With Marcus's drive and the warehouse printouts, he could rebuild the case, expose Holt, maybe even find Maya. He clasped Marcus's hand, gratitude unspoken but heavy. "You're risking a lot," he said, voice rough. Marcus shrugged, his scar twitching. "Been black in this city 50 years, risks my middle name." Clarence slipped the drive into his pocket, the bar's smoke curling around him, and stepped back into the night, daring to believe he'd turned a corner. But trust, even among allies, was a gamble, and Marcus had rolled the dice poorly, unknown. To Clarence, Cobb's money had reached him first, a briefcase of cash delivered days ago, enough to buy a new life. Marcus's tip was bait, the safe house a trap, and as Clarence neared Mechanicsville, the air grew heavy with menace. His phone, now dead, offered no warnings, and the streets lined with sagging row houses felt too quiet. He found the address, a derelict warehouse, its doors rusted, windows black. The hairs on his neck rose, but he pushed inside, the printouts, and drive clutched tight, his only weapons. The darkness swallowed him, the warehouse's air cold, reeking of oil and rot. A single bulb flickered, casting jagged shadows, and then the trap sprang. Footsteps echoed, heavy, deliberate, circling like wolves. Figures emerged, a dozen men in tactical gear, their faces masked, rifles glinting, but their patches screamed. Militia, white supremacists, Holt's hired dogs. "Well, well, Judge," their leader drawled, his voice thick with Southern venom, a Confederate flag tattooed on his neck. "Thought you'd play hero." Clarence's heart pounded. Marcus's betrayal a punch to the gut, but he stood tall, his voice steady. "You're Holt's puppets, he'll burn you too." The leader laughed, slurs spilling like sewage, each word a lash. "Time for your trial, boy." They seized him, chains snapping around his wrists, dragging him to a makeshift stage, a noose dangling above. Cameras whirred, streaming live to a dark website, the chat exploding with hate, thousands watching, betting on his pain. The militia's judge, a hulking man with dead eyes, read a mock charge. "Treason, terrorism, defying your place." Clarence's mind raced, the nooses shadow swaying, Maya's face flashing before him. He spoke, voice booming. "I'm Clarence Whitaker, Chief Justice. Your lies won't erase me." The crowd jeered, bottles smashing, but his words hit something, a crack in their armor. A younger militiaman hesitated, his rifle dipping, doubt flickering in his eyes. Clarence seized it, talking fast, calling out Holt's corruption, Cobb's lies, the truth a weapon, but the leader roared, "Enough!" and yanked the chain, the noose tightening, air choking off. Clarence's vision blurred, his legs buckling when a crate crashed, distracting the mob. He twisted, snapping a rusted link, and bolted, diving through a shattered window as bullets grazed his shoulder, blood soaking his jacket. He ran, the city a blur, the militia's shouts fading but their cameras immortalizing him. By morning, the stream was everywhere, CNN x YouTube, his trial twisted into proof of guilt. "Whitaker's terrorist confession," the headlines screamed, his defiance edited into madness. The bounty doubled, 20,000 now, every eye in America hunting him. Clarence stumbled into a storm drain, the printouts and drive still his, but his body screamed, blood loss clouding his mind. Maya was in Holt's claws, Marcus's betrayal had nearly killed him, and the nation saw him as a monster. He sank against the drain's slimy wall, jazz fading to silence in his head. Cobb and Holt weren't just winning, they were rewriting reality, their power a tidal wave. The safe house was a lie, the militia a death squad, and his face was a wanted poster. But Clarence's hand tightened around the flash drive, its data his last card. He'd find Maya, expose them, or die trying. The city's pulse thrummed above, a hunter closing in, and Clarence knew the next blow would be worse. Clarence Whitaker's shoulder burned, blood seeping through his torn jacket as he crouched in the storm drain. Atlanta's pulse a distant roar above. The militia's bullets had missed his heart, but the city's eyes hadn't. His face now. America's Most Wanted haunted every screen, the $20,000 bounty a siren call to hunters. At 68, his body screamed, ribs cracked, brow crusted. But the flash drive from Marcus and the warehouse printouts, tucked against his chest, were his lifeline. Maya, his daughter, was in Holt's clutches, and that thought alone kept his legs moving. The jazz in his mind, a faint Coltrane riff, urged him on, defiant, unbroken. He'd tracked Maya to a private prison on Atlanta's outskirts, a concrete fortress run by Warden Amos Klein, a Cobb ally with a rap sheet longer than a summer day. The facility, Ironwood Correctional, was a black hole. Black inmates funneled in, rights stripped, families silenced. Clarence had heard whispers of it in court, but now it held his daughter, a pawn in Cobb's game. He slipped through the city's fringes, dodging drones and cop cars, his silver hair hidden under a stolen hoodie. The flash drive, with Holt's recorded confessions and the printouts detailing his frame-ups, were his leverage, but saving Maya came first. Clarence needed a way in. A contact from his judicial days, a clerk named Lena, had ties to Ironwood's staff. She met him in a derelict gas station, her hands trembling as she handed him a forged ID, labeling him as a defense attorney. "Klein's tight with Cobb," she warned, voice low, eyes darting. "They're holding Maya in solitary, no charges, just security. You get caught, you're done." Clarence nodded, pocketing the ID, his resolve iron. Lena's fear was a mirror. He knew the risk, but Maya's life was worth it. At dusk, he approached Ironwood, its razor-wire fences glinting under floodlights, guards patrolling with dogs that snarled at shadows. Clarence's forged ID got him through the gate, his heart pounding as he signed in, the clerk barely glancing at his face. Inside, the prison stank of bleach and despair, its halls echoing with shouts and clanging steel. He moved fast, his limp, masked by sheer will, following Lena's map to solitary. The guards, distracted by a shift change, didn't notice the lawyer slipping into restricted wings, his eyes scanning for Maya. He found her cell, a steel tomb, Maya curled on a cot, her braids loose, her face bruised but fierce. "Dad?" she whispered, voice cracking as she saw him through the slot. Clarence's chest tightened, love and rage colliding. "I'm getting you out," he said, picking the lock with a tool Lena had slipped him, his hands steady despite the pain. The door creaked open, and Maya flung herself into his arms, her warmth a balm to his wounds. But time was a blade. Alarms would scream soon. They moved, Maya's journalist instincts sharp, mapping exits as they dodged cameras. Clarence had a plan. A podcast, run by a rogue reporter named Tarek, was streaming live from a van outside, ready to broadcast their truth. They reached a maintenance tunnel, its air dank, pipes hissing, and Clarence handed Maya the flash drive. "Get this to Tarek," he said, voice urgent. "Holt's confessions, Klein's abuses, it's all there." Maya nodded, slipping the drive into her pocket, her eyes blazing with purpose. They emerged into a loading dock, Tariq's van idling, its antenna humming. Inside, Tariq, a wiry man with a goatee, was already live, his voice crackling through thousands of listeners. "We're exposing Ironwood's hell," he said, nodding as Clarence and Maya climbed in. Clarence took the mic, his voice booming, steady as a gavel. "I'm Clarence Whitaker, Chief Justice. Holt framed me, Klein jails the innocent, and Cobb pulls the strings. Listen." Maya played the drive, Holt's voice spilling out, bragging about planted drugs, laughing about ruined lives. Tariq uploaded the printouts, scans flashing across screens, showing Klein's illegal detentions, black inmates targeted, families broken. The internet exploded, hashtags trending, protests flaring. Outside Ironwood's gates, listeners called in, outraged, their voices a chorus of support. Clarence clasped Maya's hand, hope surging, the truth finally free. Atlanta's streets buzzed, crowds chanting his name, the city waking up. He dared to believe they'd won, that Holt's empire would crack, Klein's prison would fall, and Cobb's lies would burn. Maya smiled, her bruises fading in the van's dim light, and Clarence felt the weight lift just for a moment. But victory is a cruel mirage when power fights back. Cobb, watching from his penthouse, slammed his fist on his desk, the podcasts, stream glaring on his monitors. He dialed Klein, his voice ice. "They're heroes now, fix it." Klein, sweating in his office, nodded, his guards already moving. Apex Solutions, Cobb's tech arm, spun a new lie. A press release, blasted. Across every outlet, claimed Clarence had staged Maya's capture, faking her bruises for sympathy, the podcast a terrorist stunt. Channel 7 ran it, pundits sneering, Whitaker's desperate ploy, their words twisting the truth into poison. Before Clarence could react, Klein's guards struck. Tires screeched as armored trucks rammed Tariq's van, shattering its windows, the podcast cutting to static. Guards poured out, batons swinging, their shouts laced with slurs. "Back to your cage, girl!" Maya fought, kicking a guard's shin, but they dragged her back toward Ironwood, Clarence lunging after her. A baton cracked his skull, stars bursting, and he fell, the flash drive skidding across pavement. Tariq, bloodied, tried to restart the stream, but a guard smashed his equipment, sparks flying. Clarence crawled, vision blurring as drones buzzed. Above, Apex's cameras broadcasting the chaos, framing it as a terrorist takedown. The crowd's cheers turned to screams, protesters scattering as tear gas bloomed. Then came the fire. Guards doused the van with gasoline, flames roaring, consuming Tariq's gear. His proof, his voice. Clarence staggered to his feet, the printouts singed but clutched tight, Maya's cries echoing as she vanished behind Ironwood's gates. The safe house they'd planned to flee to. A nearby motel burned too, Klein's men torching it preemptively, smoke choking the sky. Clarence stumbled into a ditch, the city's glow a mocking halo. The podcast had been their sword, but Cobb's lie was a guillotine, cutting their momentum, turning heroes into frauds. Maya was back in chains, the drive gone, their allies silenced. Holt's laughter, Klein's sneer, Cobb's bourbon glass, they haunted him, their power a vice. His shoulder bled, his skull throbbed, but Clarence's eyes burned, the jazz riff returning, fierce, unyielding. He'd free Maya, expose them, or die in the fight, but the next blow would be apocalyptic. Ever been betrayed by the system you trusted? Comment 1 if you're raging at Klein's cruelty. Feel the sting of Cobb's lies. Smash that like button. Ready for Clarence to strike back? Subscribe now, because the next chapter's a gut punch. Will Clarence free Maya from Ironwood's grip? Clarence Whitaker's head throbbed, the gash from the guard's baton pulsing as he crouched in the ditch. Atlanta's skyline a cruel glow in the distance. The singed printouts, his last proof of Holt's crimes, crackled against his chest, the only thing keeping him tethered to hope. Maya was back in Ironwood's grip, Klein's prison swallowing her whole, and Cobb's lie, that Clarence had faked her capture, had turned the city's cheers into jeers. At 68, his body was a map of pain, cracked ribs, bloodied shoulder, bruised wrists, but his mind burned, jazz notes sharp in his head, urging him to fight. He staggered to his feet, the ditch's mud sucking at his boots, and slipped into the night, a hunted man with a mission. He'd learned of Holt's trial through a burner phone, scavenged from a pawn shop, its cracked screen flickering with news. Sergeant Vernon Holt, under pressure from the podcast's fallout, faced a public hearing for misconduct, a rare crack in his armor. Clarence saw his chance, a courtroom, his domain, where he could wield the printouts like a gavel. Maya was still caged, but exposing Holt might loosen Klein's grip, force Cobb's hand. He contacted Sarah Vance, his lawyer, now underground after the firm's raid, her voice fierce through static. "We'll crash the trial," she said. "You speak, I'll get you in." The courthouse, a marble giant in downtown Atlanta, loomed. Under storm clouds, its steps crawling with reporters and cops. Clarence slipped inside, disguised in a janitor's uniform Sarah had smuggled, the printouts hidden in a mop bucket. His forged ID held, the guard's glance lazy, and he reached the courtroom, its oak pews packed, air thick with tension. Holt sat at the defense table, his mustache twitching, eyes flinty, his badge gleaming like a taunt. The judge, Miriam Stokes, a black woman with a reputation for fairness, gave Clarence hope. She'd clerked under him decades ago, her integrity a beacon in a corrupt system. Sarah met him in a side room, her suit rumpled but her eyes blazing. "Stokes is clean," she whispered, handing him a microphone wired to a hidden recorder. "Present the printouts, call for a mistrial. I've got Maya's location. Klein's moving her tonight." Clarence nodded, his heart pounding, the eye plan crystallizing. He'd expose Holt, free Maya, and crack Cobb's empire all in one blow. The printouts, detailing Holt's frame-ups, were his sword and Stokes his shield. He straightened, 68 years of grit in his spine, and stepped into the courtroom, shedding the disguise, his presence electrifying the crowd. Gasps rippled. As Clarence took the floor, his voice booming, steady as granite. "I am Clarence Whitaker, Chief Justice, falsely accused by Vernon Holt." He held up the printouts, their edges charred but legible, reading aloud Holt's emails, his orders to plant drugs, his slurs scrawled in memos. The gallery erupted, phones recording, reporters scribbling. Holt's face reddened, his fists clenched. But Stokes banged her gavel, her eyes locked on Clarence. "Proceed," she said, voice firm, a rare ally in the storm. Clarence laid it bare. Holt's cocaine stash, his brutal arrests, the frame-up that caged him. He spoke of Maya, jailed without charge, and Klein's prison, a dungeon for black. Lives. The crowd leaned forward, some nodding, others whispering, the air crackling with truth. Sarah slipped Stokes a copy of the printouts, and the judge's brow furrowed, her pen slashing notes. Holt squirmed, his lawyer stammering, and Clarence felt it. Victory close enough to taste. Stokes seemed ready to act, her questions to Holt sharp, her gaze cutting through his lies. The courtroom was his again, justice within reach. But power doesn't yield easily, and Cobb's shadow was a noose. Randall Cobb, from his penthouse, had watched the trial stream, his bourbon glass sweating as Clarence spoke. A call to a juror, a retired cop with debts Cobb owned, sealed the trap. The jury, sequestered but not untouchable, had been bought. $5,000 per head to acquit Holt. As Stokes deliberated, the foreman, a wiry man with a crooked smile, passed a note. "Not guilty." Stokes read it, her face tightening, but the law bound her. "Vernon Holt is acquitted," she declared, her voice heavy, the gavel's crack a death knell. Clarence's stomach plummeted, the printouts trembling in his hands. "This is a lie!" he shouted, lunging toward the bench, but Sarah grabbed him, her eyes wide. The crowd, primed by Cobb's lies, turned feral, Holt's allies among them, off-duty cops, militia plants, chanting slurs, their voices a venomous tide. "Liar, thug!" they roared, fists raised. Some swinging bats smuggled past security. A bottle smashed at Clarence's feet, glass spraying, and the courtroom erupted into chaos, pews overturning, screams piercing the air. Sarah yanked Clarence toward a side exit, Maya's location burning in his mind, but the mob surged, blocking their path. Air bat grazed Sarah's arm, her gasp sharp, and Clarence shielded her, his shoulder screaming as he pushed through. Outside, the courthouse steps were a battlefield, protesters clashing with Holt's goons, sirens wailing. Clarence and Sarah broke free, sprinting into an alley, but a shadow moved. A sniper, Cobb's hire, perched on a rooftop, his scope glinting. A bullet grazed Clarence's arm, blood blooming, the pain a white-hot scream. "You're done, Whitaker," the sniper's radio crackled, Cobb's voice faint but clear. They dove behind a dumpster, Clarence's vision swimming, the printouts clutched tight, Sarah's hand on his wound, staunching the flow. The trial, their one shot, was a bust, Holt walking free, emboldened, his grin a taunt in Clarence's mind. Stokes had been their hope, but Cobb's money was a god, bending justice to its will. Maya was still caged, Klein's grip tighter, and the sniper's shot was a warning. The next wouldn't miss. The city's pulse thrummed, a hunter closing in, and Clarence's jazz faded, replaced by a low, angry hum. He tore his sleeve, binding his arm, Sarah's eyes fierce despite her. Pain. "We're not done," she said, echoing Maya's defiance. Clarence nodded, blood dripping, his resolve aflame in the dark. The printouts were still his, Stokes's doubt a crack in the system. He'd find Maya, expose Klein, bury Holt, no, matter the cost. But Cobb's sniper was out there, and the next blow would be lethal. Clarence's fist clenched, the fight all he had left, the city a cage ready to snap shut. Clarence Whitaker's arm bled through the makeshift bandage. The sniper's bullet a burning reminder of Cobb's reach, as he and Sarah Vance ducked through Atlanta's alleys. The city's neon glow felt like a predator's eyes, its pulse, a drumbeat of pursuit. The singed printouts, proof of Holt's crimes, pressed against his chest, his only weapon now. At 68, Clarence's body was a battlefield, cracked ribs, gashed head, grazed arm, but his mind was a furnace, fueled by Maya's captivity and Holt's acquittal. The courthouse riot, the bought jury, Stokes's helpless gavel, all screamed one truth. Cobb's power was a god, and Clarence was its heretic. Sarah, her arm bruised from the mob's bat, kept pace, her eyes fierce. "We've got one shot," she said, voice low. "Leak the printouts to the national press." Clarence nodded, the jazz in his head a faint, defiant wail, urging him to fight. They slipped into a derelict print shop, its presses rusted, air thick with ink and dust. Sarah's contact, a grizzled editor at the Washington Post named Carla Dunn, had agreed to meet, her reputation for exposing corruption a beacon. Carla arrived, her grey ponytail swinging, eyes sharp behind wireframe glasses. "Show me," she said, no nonsense, as Clarence spread the printouts on a table. Holt's emails, his orders to plant drugs, his slurs in memos, all laid bare. Carla's pen flew, her questions surgical, dates, sources, witnesses. "This is dynamite," she said, voice low, already typing on her laptop. "We'll run it tomorrow, front page, online now." Clarence's heart surged, hope flickering. Despite the pain, the Post's reach was global, its credibility a hammer to crack Cobb's lies. He pictured Holt's face, Klein's panic, Maya's cell door opening. Sarah uploaded scans of the printouts, Carla's team verifying them in real time, the story taking shape. Atlanta cops' racist conspiracy exposed. By midnight, the article hit, shared 1,000,000 times, X exploding with outrage. Protests flared across Atlanta, crowds choking downtown, signs demanding Holt's arrest, Klein's resignation, Cobb's head. Clarence watched from the shop's cracked window, the city's skyline pulsing with chants, his name a rallying cry. He clasped Sarah's hand, daring to believe they'd won, that truth would burn through the lies. The protests swelled, black neighborhoods rising, students joining, even white allies marching, their voices a tide. Clarence's mugshot once, a brand of shame, became a symbol, T-shirts printed with his face, "Free Whitaker" graffitied on walls. The jazz in his head swelled, Coltrane's notes soaring, and for a moment he felt the gavel back in his hand, justice alive. Sarah's phone buzzed, text from activists confirming Maya was still at Ironwood. But pressure was mounting. Klein couldn't hold her forever. Clarence exhaled, the city's roar a lifeline, the truth his sword. But power doesn't kneel, and Cobb's wrath was a storm. From his penthouse, Randall Cobb watched the protests on a dozen screens, his bourbon glass cracking in his grip. Apex Solutions, his tech empire, was no mere media machine. It was a digital warlord, its servers humming with malice. He called his lead hacker, a pale wraith named Victor, his voice ice. "Crash the city, blame Whitaker." Victor's fingers danced, and by dawn, Atlanta's grid buckled. Power lines sparked, traffic lights died, hospitals flickered, looting erupted in the chaos. Channel 7, Cobb's mouthpiece, pinned it on Clarence, a new deepfake showing him hacking the grid, his face snarling on every screen. The headline screamed, "Whitaker's cyber terror plunges Atlanta into darkness." Cobb's voice, smooth as venom, narrated the lie, calling Clarence a domestic enemy orchestrating chaos. The protests fractured, some turning on Clarence, their signs now reading "traitor." Holt seized the moment, declaring a curfew, his voice booming on emergency broadcasts. For public safety, black neighborhoods are under lockdown. Said armored patrols rolling out, targeting Vine City, West End, every block where Clarence's supporters lived. Tanks rumbled, tear gas bloomed, and screams echoed, the city a war zone. Clarence and Sarah fled the print shop as sirens closed in, the blackout's darkness a cloak but a cage. They ducked into a barber shop, its owner, a grizzled man named Earl hiding them in a back room. Earl's radio crackled. Holt's curfew orders laced with slurs. Keep those animals in line. Clarence's stomach churned. The lockdown a noose on his people, his fight twisted into their punishment. Sarah's face paled, her phone dead in the outage, Carla's article buried under Cobb's lie. The printouts, still his, felt heavier. Their truth drowned in chaos. The barbershop's door rattled, cops banging, their flashlights slicing the dark. Earl shoved Clarence and Sarah into a crawl space, its air dank, spiders skittering. Outside, a raid unfolded, batons cracking, glass smashing, the curfew's wrath unleashed. Clarence's hideout wasn't safe. Holt's patrols were surgical, guided by Apex's drones, their cameras whirring above. A Molotov cocktail sailed through the shop's window, flames roaring, the air choking with smoke. Clarence crawled out, coughing, his leg catching fire, the pain a scream as Sarah doused it with a rag. The printouts singed further, but he clutched. Them, his eyes watering, Earl's shouts fading as the shop burned. They staggered into a vacant lot, the city a flickering hellscape, power lines sparking, crowds scattering. Cobb's voice boomed on a jumbotron, untouched by the blackout, calling Clarence a plague on our city. The curfew's patrols, all white, tore through black homes, kids dragged from beds, elders cuffed, slurs carved into doors. Clarence's leg throbbed, the burn scarring his skin, but Maya's face drove him, her captivity a fire in his veins. The Post's article had lit a spark, but Cobb's blackout was a tidal wave, drowning hope, turning allies into prey. Sarah pulled him behind, a dumpster, her breath ragged, her eyes fierce. "We're not done," she said, her voice a blade. Clarence nodded, the printouts his last card, his jazz a low, angry hum. Holt's curfew, Klein's prison, Cobb's hack. They were a machine, crushing his people, his daughter, his name. But machines had weaknesses, and he'd find Cobb's or die trying. The city's flames danced, a hunter's eyes in the dark. And Clarence knew the next blow would be cataclysmic. Ever felt the system turn your truth into a lie? Comment 1 if you're furious at Cobb's blackout. Heart-breaking for Clarence's scarred leg. Smash that like button. Ready to see him fight a city on fire? Subscribe now because the next chapter's a heart-stopper. Can Clarence find Cobb's weakness before the curfew crushes him? Clarence Whitaker's leg burned, the Molotov scar a throbbing pulse as he and Sarah Vance crouched behind the dumpster, Atlanta's blackout casting the city in a flickering shroud. The air reeked of smoke and tear gas, the curfew's patrols, tearing through black neighborhoods, their slurs echoing like war drums. The singed printouts, Holt's damning emails pressed against Clarence's chest, their edges crumbling but their truth intact. At 68, his body was a wreck, cracked ribs, grazed arm, gashed head, but Maya's captivity in Ironwood fueled his resolve. Cobb's grid hack had turned his victory into chaos, Holt's tanks crushing his people, but Clarence's jazz, a low, fierce riff, whispered fight. Sarah's eyes, glinting in the dark, held the same fire. "We need leverage," she said, voice steady. "Someone inside Cobb's circle." Clarence nodded. The printouts his only card, the city a cage closing fast. A lead came from Earl, the barber, who'd escaped his shop's flames with a tip. Naomi Chen, Apex Solutions ex-IT chief, had quit Cobb's empire months ago, disgusted by his tactics. She was hiding in East Point, a whistleblower with keys to Cobb's servers. Clarence and Sarah slipped through the blackout's chaos, dodging drones and patrols, their boots splashing in flooded streets. Naomi's hideout, a cramped apartment above a shuttered bodega, stank of mildew, its windows taped with cardboard. Naomi, a wiry woman in her 30s, her black hair buzzed short, opened the door, her eyes wary but sharp. "You're Whitaker," she said, voice clipped, scanning the alley. "I know what Cobb's doing, I can help." Inside, Naomi's laptop glowed, its screen a maze of code. "Cobb's servers hold everything," she said, fingers flying. "Emails tying him to Holt, Klein, even the militia. I've got backdoor access, but it's risky. His security's military grade." Clarence handed her the printouts, their charred pages proof of Holt's frame-ups. Naomi's eyes widened, her nod firm. "This syncs with what I've got. We hack Apex, leak it all, Cobb's done. Sarah's face lit up, hope flickering, and Clarence felt it too. A chance to free Maya, bury Holt, end Klein's reign. They planned fast. Naomi would breach Apex's servers, Clarence would verify the data, Sarah would feed it to Carla at the post. They worked through the night, the apartment a bunker, the blackouts hum their cover. Naomi cracked Apex's firewall, pulling emails that made Clarence's blood boil. Cobb ordering Holt's acquittal, funding Klein's prison, bankrolling the militia's trial. One thread confirmed Cobb's deepfake, another his grid hack. Each a nail in his coffin. Clarence cross-checked the printouts, tying Holt's drug plants to Cobb's cache, the conspiracy a web of hate. By dawn, they had a digital arsenal, hundreds of files, irrefutable, ready to flood the world. Naomi burned the data to a drive, her hands trembling with adrenaline. "This'll kill him," she said, a rare smile breaking through. Clarence's heart surged, the jazz in his head soaring, Coltrane's notes a battle cry. He pictured Maya free, Holt cuffed, Cobb's penthouse empty. The leak would reignite the protests, force Stokes to act, crack Ironwood's gates. Sarah's phone, charged. Via Naomi's generator, pinged. Carla was ready, her team prepping a global exposé. Clarence clasped Naomi's shoulder, gratitude heavy, and Sarah's eyes shone, their momentum a tide. They'd done it, turned Cobb's machine against him, the truth a blade at his throat. He dared to believe for a moment that the war was theirs, but betrayal is a shadow and Cobb's grip was iron. Naomi's past wasn't clean. She'd taken Apex's money, built its systems, and Cobb knew her weaknesses. A week ago, his men had found her brother, a med student in debt, and blackmailed him with a forged arrest warrant. Naomi's loyalty wavered, her fear a crack Cobb exploited. As she handed Clarence the drive, her laptop pinged, a silent alarm, triggered by her own code, alerting Apex's servers. She'd meant to disable it, but Cobb's threat, her brother's life, froze her hand. Victor, Cobb's hacker, grinned in his bunker, screens flashing red, and Cobb's voice hissed through a headset, "Send the army!" The apartment's door exploded, Apex's private security, black-clad mercenaries, not cops, storming in, their gas masks glinting, rifles raised. "Whitaker down!" their leader roared, his voice a machine snarl, slurs laced in every syllable. Clarence dove, shoving Naomi behind a couch, but gas canisters hissed, clouds choking the air, burning his lungs. Sarah swung a lamp, cracking. A mercenary's helmet, but another slammed her to the floor, her scream cut short. Naomi froze, her laptop smashed, her betrayal a weight she couldn't voice. Clarence crawled, the printouts and drive clutched tight, his legs scar screaming as boots stomped inches away. The mercenaries were surgical, torching Naomi's gear, flames licking the walls, servers melting into slag. A gas mask loomed, the leader's eyes dead, his baton cracking Clarence's ribs, blood pooling in his mouth. "Cobb says burn it all," he spat, slurs carving the air, each word a lash. Clarence's vision blurred, the drive skidding across the floor, but he lunged, snatching it as flames roared. Sarah kicked free, dragging him through a shattered window, glass raining, the apartment a furnace behind them. Naomi screamed, trapped, her betrayal her cage as mercenaries hauled her away. They stumbled into an alley, Clarence coughing blood, the printouts singed blacker, the drive scorched but intact. Sirens wailed, Apex's drones buzzing, their cameras, broadcasting the raid as a cyber-terrorist bust. Channel 7 spun it live, Whitaker's hackers caught, Cobb's voice purring, framing Clarence as the mastermind, Naomi his pawn. The curfew tightened. Black neighborhoods raided harder, families torn apart. Clarence's name a curse again. His leg buckled, Sarah's arm around him, her face grim. "We've still got the drive," she said, voice fierce. But the raids. Cost was brutal. Naomi gone, the servers ash, their edge blunted. Clarence sank against a wall, the city's flames a mocking dance. Cobb's mercenaries weren't just muscle. They were a message, his power untouchable, his hate a blade. The hack had been their checkmate, but Naomi's betrayal, coerced by Cobb's blackmail, turned it into check. Maya was still in Ironwood. Holt's patrols a noose, Klein's prison a tomb. Clarence's jazz faded, a low hum of rage, his hand tightening around the drive. He'd find another way, free his daughter, expose the beast, but the next blow would be a reckoning. Clarence Whitaker's lungs burned, the gas from Apex's raid lingering as he and Sarah Vance staggered through Atlanta's blackened streets, the city a flickering war zone under Holt's curfew. His leg's scar throbbed, his ribs cracked with every breath, blood crusting his arm, but the scorched drive and singed printouts clutched against his chest were his last hope. At 68, Clarence was a ghost, hunted by drones and bounties, Maya's captivity in Ironwood, a knife in his heart. Cobb's mercenaries had crushed their hack, Naomi's betrayal a wound deeper than any bullet. But the drive's data, Cobb's emails, Holt's confessions, Klein's abuses, was a blade he'd wield. Sarah's eyes, bruised but fierce, met his in the dark. "We hit Cobb where it hurts," she said, voice a blade. "His gala tomorrow night." Clarence nodded, the jazz in his head a low, angry pulse, defiance his only fuel. Cobb's annual gala, a glitzy affair at the Fox Theatre, drew Atlanta's elite, mayors, CEOs, judges, all pawns in his empire. The drive's emails tying Cobb to Holt and Klein could ruin them, and the gala's live stream broadcast to millions was Clarence's stage. Sarah's contact, a disgruntled stagehand named Rico, slipped them invites, forged as press passes, and a hack to hijack the stream. Clarence shaved his silver hair, donning glasses and a suit, his limp masked by sheer will. Sarah, her arm bandaged, posed as his producer, her laptop ready to upload the drive. The theatre loomed, its marquee blazing, red carpet crawling with wealth and power, guards oblivious to the storm coming. Inside, chandeliers glittered, champagne flowed, and Cobb held court, his silver mane gleaming, his smile a shark's. Clarence's pulse raced, the drive in his pocket a ticking bomb. Rico met them backstage, his hands shaky, pointing to a control booth. "Stream's wired," he whispered. "You've got 10 minutes before security sweeps." Clarence nodded, his heart pounding, Maya's face flashing. Maya, caged by Klein, her bruises his failure. He and Sarah slipped into the booth, the gala's hum muffling their steps, the screen showing Cobb's speech, his voice purring about Atlanta's future. Sarah plugged in the drive, her fingers flying, hijacking the stream. Clarence took the mic, his voice booming across the theatre, the city, the world. "I am Clarence Whitaker, Chief Justice, branded a terrorist by liars." The crowd gasped, heads turning, Cobb's smile freezing. Clarence read the emails, each word a hammer. Cobb's payments to Holt, Klein's prisoner quotas, the militia's orders. Screens flashed the printouts, Holt's slurs in bold, Klein's ledgers of black inmates. The elite squirmed, phones. Recording, the stream viral in seconds. "This is your city," Clarence roared, "built on hate, paid in blood." The crowd turned, murmurs rising, some shouting, "Arrest Cobb!" A senator stood, face pale, demanding answers. Cobb's eyes darted, his hand signaling guards, but the stream was unstoppable, shared globally, X ablaze with outrage. Sarah grinned, the drive's data flooding newsrooms, Carla's team at the Post amplifying it. Clarence felt it. Victory. Raw and real, the truth shattering Cobb's mask. He pictured Maya free, Holt cuffed, Klein's prison gutted. The jazz in his head soared, Coltrane's wail a triumph, the gavel his again. But power bites back, and Holt's venom was a flood. Cobb cornered, dialed Holt, his voice ice. "End him now!" Holt's militia, pre-positioned, stormed the theatre, no longer masked but bold, their Confederate patches gleaming, rifles raised. "Whitaker's got hostages," their leader lied, voice booming, the crowd panicking, champagne glasses shattering. They dragged Clarence from the booth, Sarah kicking, her laptop smashed. The militia hauled him outside to Peachtree Street, where a makeshift gallows stood, a noose swaying, cameras rolling, a public execution streamed to millions. The militia's leader, the same tattooed brute from the warehouse, grinned, slurs spilling each a lash. "Time to hang, boy," he spat the crowd, Holt's plants chanting, "Traitor!" The rope bit Clarence's neck, his wrists chained, his legs scar, screaming as he stood on a crate. The stream's chat exploded with hate, bets on his last breath. But Clarence spoke, voice steady, cutting through the noise. "I'm Clarence Whitaker, your Chief Justice. Cobb's lies, Holt's crimes, Klein's cages, they're the traitors. Fight them." His words hit, some in the crowd. Pausing, phones still recording, a few shouting, "Let him go." A militiaman wavered, his rifle dipping, doubt in his eyes. But the leader yanked the crate, the noose tightening, air choking off. Clarence's vision blurred, his ribs cracking, Maya's face his anchor. Then a scream. Maya, freed by a guard. Sarah had bribed, sprinting through the chaos, tackling the leader, her braids flying. The crowd surged, some joining her, others fleeing, the militia's line cracking. Sarah cut Clarence's rope, his breath gasping, the gallows collapsing as he fell, Maya's arms catching him, her tears hot against his face. But Cobb's wrath was swift. He cut the stream, Apex's servers spinning a new lie. Whitaker's stunt fool's crowd. Channel 7 ran it, framing the gallows as Clarence's hoax, his speech edited into threats. The truth drowned, the crowd's doubt buried, and drones buzzed overhead, Apex's cameras locking on Clarence and Maya, their faces beamed to every cop, every bounty hunter. They fled, Sarah leading, the city's streets a maze, drones trailing. Like hounds, their lasers slicing the dark. Clarence's neck burned, his body crumbling. But Maya's hand in his was steel, the drive lost, but the printouts his last spark. They ducked into a sewer, the gala's lights fading, the city's pulse, a hunter's beat. Cobb's drones, Holt's militia, Klein's grip. They were a machine, relentless, their hate a fire-consuming truth. The stream had been their sword, but Cobb's lie was a guillotine, turning triumph into terror. Clarence's jazz faded. A low hum of rage, his eyes on Maya, free but hunted. He'd expose Cobb, end Holt, or die in the fight, but the next blow would be apocalyptic. Clarence Whitaker's throat burned, the nooses bite lingering as he, Maya, and Sarah Vance splashed through Atlanta's sewer, the city's drones buzzing like vultures above. His legs scar throbbed, his ribs cracked, blood crusting his arm and head, but the singed printouts, Holt's damning emails clung to his chest, a fading ember of hope. At 68, Clarence was a shadow, his body crumbling. Maya's freedom a fleeting spark in Ironwood's shadow. Cobb's gala stream had turned their truth into a lie, Holt's militia nearly killing him, and the city's curfew crushed his people. Maya's hand, warm in his, was his anchor, her braids wet, her eyes fierce despite her bruises. Sarah led, her arm bruised, her voice a blade. "We need a signal," she said, the sewer's dank air swallowing her words. "One last push." Clarence nodded, the jazz in his head a faint angry hum, defiance his last breath. They surfaced in a derelict church in West End, its stained glass shattered, pews splintered, a sanctuary defiled by the curfew's raids. The pastor, a wiry elder named Amos, hid them in a basement, its walls scrawled with prayers and slurs from Holt's patrols. Amos, a veteran of the civil rights era, knew Clarence from court, his eyes soft but resolute. "This place is yours," he said, handing them a pirate radio rig, its antenna patched with duct tape. "Speak, Judge. The people are listening." Maya's journalist instincts flared, her fingers testing the rig, its static crackling with possibility. Clarence saw it, a voice to pierce Cobb's blackout, to reignite the protests, to free his city. They planned fast, the basement a bunker, the city's flames a distant roar. Maya rigged the radio to broadcast on a hacked frequency, bypassing Apex's gridlock. Clarence would speak, reading the printouts, calling for justice, while Sarah coordinated with Carla at the post, feeding the signal to global outlets. Amos's congregation, scattered but loyal, spread word, phones buzzing in black neighborhoods, the curfew's grip loosening as hope stirred. By midnight, they were live, the rig's hum a heartbeat, Maya's voice opening the stream. "This is the people's pulse," she said, fierce, "with Clarence Whitaker, your Chief Justice." Clarence took the mic, his voice steady, cutting through the static. "I'm no terrorist, I'm your judge, framed by Vernon Holt, caged by Amos Klein, hunted by Randall Cobb." He read the printouts, each email a blow: Holt's drug plants, Klein's prisoner quotas, Cobb's militia funds. He spoke of Maya's bruises, the gallows, the blackout. His words a fire in the dark. Atlanta, rise, he urged, for your families, your freedom. The signal spread, phones lighting up, X trending. Protests swelling outside Ironwood, City Hall, Cobb's Towers. Listeners called in, voices raw, mothers, students, workers chanting, Whitaker's truth. Clarence clasped Maya's hand, her eyes shining, the church's walls trembling with the city's roar. The broadcast went viral, shared globally, newsrooms amplifying it, Carla's team splashing the printouts online. Protests choked Atlanta's streets, black neighborhoods defying the curfew, crowds clashing with Holt's tanks, their signs reading, End the lies. Clarence felt it. Victory. Raw. Pulsing. The truth a tide washing Cobb's blackout away. Maya hugged him. Her warmth a balm, and Sarah's rare smile broke through the radio's hum a symphony. They'd done it, turned the city's heart, the gavel theirs again. Ironwood's gates rattled, Klein's hold slipping, Holt's name a curse. But power is a beast and Cobb's claws were steel. From his penthouse, Cobb watched the protests, his screens flashing with Clarence's voice, his bourbon glass shattering in his grip. Apex Solutions, his digital empire, wasn't just a weapon. It was a god, its servers tracking every signal. Victor, his hacker, traced the radio's frequency in seconds, his grin feral. Got them, he hissed, and Cobb's voice was ice. Crush it. End Whitaker. Apex's drones, armed with military-grade tech, locked on the church, but Cobb wanted more. A spectacle to bury the truth. The basement's radio crackled, a warning from Amos upstairs, drones circling, their hum a death knell. Before Clarence could react, the church shook. A tank-like riot bot, Apex's prototype, smashing through the wall, its steel treads grinding pews to dust, its cameras whirred, streaming live, Channel 7 spinning it. Whitaker's terror. Cell raided. The bot's arm, a hydraulic claw, tore the radio rig apart, sparks flying, the signal cutting to static. Clarence dove, shielding Maya, but the bot's gas jets hissed, choking clouds burning his lungs, his legs scar screaming as he crawled. Sarah swung a pipe, denting the bot's hull, but its claw swatted her, her body slamming a wall, blood trickling. Maya screamed, grabbing the printouts as debris rained, the church's ceiling cracking. The bot's voice, Cobb's pre-recorded taunt, boomed. Whitaker plague terminated. Militia stormed in. Holt's dogs, their rifles raised, slurs. Carved in every shout, Die, boy! Clarence's vision blurred, his body failing. The curfew's raids echoing outside. Black homes burning, his people crushed. He thought he was done. The jazz silent, his strength gone. Maya dragged him, her arms steel, through a trapdoor Amos had shown them, the bot's claw grazing Clarence's back, blood soaking his shirt. They stumbled into a tunnel, the church. Collapsing above, its stained glass buried, a sacred space defiled. Sarah limped behind, coughing, her face grim. The city's screens, untouched by the blackout, flashed Cobb's voice, now live. Whitaker's plague ends tonight. The protests faltered, some turning on Clarence, Cobb's lie reigniting fear. The curfew's tanks rolling harder, families torn apart. They emerged in a vacant lot, the city a smouldering hell, drones circling, their lasers slicing the dark. Clarence's leg buckled, his body a wreck. The printout singed to near dust, but Maya's hand steadied him, her eyes fierce. The radio had been their voice, but Cobb's bot was a guillotine, crushing hope, silencing truth. Holt's militia, Klein's prison, Cobb's drones, they were a machine, relentless, their hate, a fire consuming all. Clarence's jazz was a whisper, rage his only spark. He'd free Maya, end them or die, but the next blow would be the end. Clarence Whitaker's body was a ruin, his legs scar searing, ribs cracked, blood crusting his arm and head, as he, Maya, and Sarah Vance stumbled through Atlanta's vacant lot, the city's flames a mocking crown in the distance. The churches, collapse echoed behind them, Apex's riot bot a steel demon that had crushed their radio, their voice, their hope. The singed printouts, Holt's damning emails, were ash in Clarence's pocket, their truth nearly lost. At 68, he was a ghost, hunted by Cobb's drones, Maya's freedom from Ironwood a fleeting spark now dimmed by the curfew's noose. Maya's hand, warm but trembling, steadied him. Her braids matted, her eyes fierce despite her bruises. Sarah, limping, her face bloodied, pointed to a sewer grate. "Cobb's penthouse," she said, voice raw. "One last play." Clarence nodded, the jazz in his head a faint, furious whisper, his resolve a blade honed by loss. Cobb's penthouse, atop Apex Solutions Tower, was a fortress of glass and steel, its servers holding the keys to his empire. Holt's orders, Klein's ledgers, the militia's pay. Clarence had one card left, a drone stolen from a downed Apex unit in the lot, its hackable software a gift from Naomi's betrayal. Maya, her journalist instincts sharp, had studied Apex's tech, her fingers already probing the drone's controls. "We can breach his network," she said, voice steady, the sewer's dank air swallowing her words. "Stream his confession. End this." Sarah's eyes burned, her plan brutal, infiltrate, hack, broadcast, no matter the cost. Clarence's heart pounded, Maya's face his anchor, the city's pulse a hunter closing in. They moved, slipping through sewers to a service tunnel beneath Apex's tower, the drone tucked under Clarence's arm, its hum a faint promise. His body screamed, every step a knife in his leg, his breath ragged, blood seeping. But Maya's defiance fueled him. The tunnel led to a maintenance shaft, its ladder rusted, Clarence climbing with gritted teeth, Sarah and Maya behind. They emerged. In a utility room, the tower's hum vibrating, guards' boots echoing nearby. Maya hacked a keypad, her phone's last battery sparking, and they slipped into a server bay, its air cold, racks glowing with data. Cobb's secrets, ripe for the taking. The drone's software synced, Maya's fingers flying, breaching Apex's network, its firewalls crumbling under her skill. Clarence watched, pride swelling despite the pain, his daughter a warrior. The servers yielded gold, emails, videos, ledgers, a full confession from Cobb, recorded for his inner circle, bragging. About Holt's frame-ups, Klein's prison, the blackout, the gallows. "Atlanta's mine," Cobb's voice sneered, slurs lacing every word, his hate a blueprint for Clarence's hell. Maya routed the data to the drone, its uplink ready to stream to every device in Georgia, phones, TVs, billboards, a tidal wave of truth. They climbed to the penthouse, a glass palace overlooking Atlanta's smoldering skyline, Cobb alone, his bourbon glass glinting, unaware of the storm. Clarence limped forward, the drone whirring, Maya at the controls, Sarah guarding the door. "It's over," Clarence said, voice steady, his gavel's echo in every word. Cobb turned, his silver mane glinting, his smile a snake's. "You're a dead man, Whitaker," he spat, slurs dripping, but Maya hit send. The drone stream blasting Cobb's confession across the city. His face, his voice, his crimes flooded screens, newsrooms X the world, hashtags exploding, protests reigniting, Ironwood's gates buckling. Cobb lunged, a hidden pistol flashing, but Clarence tackled him, his ribs screaming, the gun skidding. Across marble, Maya's drone hovered, streaming their fight. Clarence's bloodied face a symbol, Cobb's snarls a confession. The city roared, crowds storming Apex's gates, Holt's tanks retreating, Klein's prison raided. Police, shamed by the stream, arrested Holt mid-broadcast, his mustache twitching, cuffs snapping. Klein, cornered, surrendered, Ironwood's inmates freed, Maya's bruises a rallying cry. Cobb's empire crumbled, his allies fleeing, his name, poison. But the twist came sharp and cold. Clarence, battered, stood over Cobb, the penthouse a ruin, Maya and Sarah at his side. He pulled a recorder from his jacket, its red light steady every moment of his fight. Holt's stop, the gallows, the blackout, captured for a federal probe he'd launched months ago, suspecting Atlanta's rot. "I resign," he said, voice booming, the stream still live. "Not in defeat, but to expose this city's heart. The Justice Department's coming." The crowd gasped, X erupted, his sacrifice a bomb, Chief Justice no more but a whistleblower, his evidence sparking a nationwide reckoning. He limped out, Maya's arm around him, Sarah's nod fierce, the city's flames fading as dawn broke. Holt and Klein were cuffed, Cobb's penthouse empty. but a shadow watched from a rooftop, a new figure, eyes cold, Apex's logo on his cuff, a bigger foe rising. Clarence's jazz returned, a low, defiant riff, his fight not over. The probe would burn Atlanta's corruption, but the war was just beginning and he'd face it bloodied but unbowed. The gavel's shadow his legacy. The gavel's shadow delivers a raw, unflinching look at systemic racism, showing how power can twist justice to crush the innocent. Clarence Whitaker's fight as a black Chief Justice against a racist machine, Holt's frame-ups, Cobb's lies Klein's prison, teaches us resilience in the face of relentless hate. His journey from a traffic stop to a federal probe reveals that truth, though battered, can spark change when wielded with courage. Clarence's sacrifice, resigning, to expose Atlanta's corruption, underscores that personal loss can fuel collective gain, a lesson for anyone facing injustice. The story also exposes the fragility of trust, Naomi's betrayal, Marcus's sellout, showing how fear and greed can fracture even the strongest bonds. Yet, Maya's defiance and Sarah's loyalty prove that community can rebuild what's broken. The racist system's brutality, from slurs to gallows, mirrors real-world struggles, urging us to confront bias head-on. Clarence's jazz, a constant pulse, symbolizes hope's persistence, a reminder to find strength in heritage. The final twist, a new foe rising, warns that victory is never final. Vigilance is key. This tale calls us to stand firm, speak truth, and fight for justice no matter the cost. What racist barriers have you faced or seen? Comment below, hit like if Clarence's fight moves you, subscribe for more truth, and share to spread the word. Thank you for joining this journey. Here's to courage and justice in your battles.